So we've got our little stalk assembly removed from the car. This is pretty simple to get to. You just have to remove the airbag, followed by the steering wheel, take off the top and bottom steering column covers, loosen this little compression ring that holds it to the steering column, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plugs that have to come off the back, and the whole unit slides off the steering column. So what we're addressing today though is the cruise control switch. You might notice that in your B5 or your C5, your cruise control doesn't work. What's going on is inside of the stalk here, the contact pads are most likely corroded. These cars are 25 years or sometimes older, and that corrosion will cause issues with the contact pads not being able to bridge the gap and send the signal to your ECU to accelerate, set, or cancel your cruise. And you might also see in VCDS that you have a fault that says cruise control implausible signal, and then your cruise totally doesn't work at all. In my car, I could do this maybe 50 times and I might get it to set once. So it does still function, but today we're going to tear this apart, get in there and clean the corrosion off, and I'll show you how to test from the pins to make sure that your continuity is good and that you'll have functioning cruise control once you get it back in the car. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take off this 6-pin connector. This harness goes directly up the stalk into the cruise control switch. And what we're doing is providing enough slack to slide the actual circuit board and everything out of this stalk from this end. I think it's T6. It's very, very small, much smaller than what you get in most toolkits. Fortunately for me, this little tray here will double as my parts holder because there are a lot of small parts here to keep track of. So once this comes off, it just slides right out. Be careful not to use too much force. These are old, brittle harnesses. We're gonna feed this through to let us get that slack. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pry off the reset button here. And you can do that with a small pick or a small flathead. I can actually use my fingernails on this one and pull it out. There's a small spring on there, so don't let that fly off. And then go ahead and turn this over and a little metal rod will fall out. At this point, what we're gonna do is pry apart the front and back covers of the wiper stalk. So let me grab my pick so I can show you how to do that. Any small pointed tool will do. You don't need a lot of force to pry these off, but what you're gonna do is go under the end here and you can start to lift them off. Just like this. And once you get it off, the whole thing will lift out of the assembly. We're gonna do the same thing to the back here. Here we go. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start feeding this wire up through the wiper stalk to give us some slack in here. And then I can depress this white tab and pull the unit out of the front of it. Just like that. Okay. Don't pull too hard. Continue feeding wire to let it fall out. And be ready. I got really lucky just now. This small spring will fly out of the front. It sits in this channel here, this tiny little guy. So now that that's done, I'm gonna continue feeding this wire through here until I get the whole unit out. Keep in mind that I need to keep my hands covering all this in case small parts fly out. So there we go. We got the wires fed all the way through. And here you go. This is what your cruise button assembly looks like. You can see there's a small circuit board in there with 6 wires going to it. And we'll be performing a functions check with our multimeter set on continuity later to verify the functions when these buttons are depressed. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna actually pull the button itself off, and that's done with these 2 small plastic tabs on both sides here. I'm just gonna take my pick and lift up very gently, and it should come off. There we go. And there's 2 small springs and a white plastic plate that will fall out of here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that off. And then there's one more small white plate that'll fall out. At this point, what we're gonna do is feed our cruise control this direction. The circuit board, we're gonna feed it this direction out of the white housing here. So on the back, there's a small tab. We're gonna lift that up and push the circuit board this way out of the assembly. Just be very gentle with this. There we go. And now the slider, we're gonna take that off. And you can see our circuit board here. Now, this one is not as bad as some I've seen, but you can see there is a lot of corrosion and crud on top of these traces, and that can cause you connectivity issues. Even a little bit can cause the switch to be intermittent in its functions. And so what we want to do is get those back to a bright, shiny copper, and we're going to do that with some contact cleaner, isopropyl alcohol, some Q-tips, or maybe even like an emery cloth or small buffing wheel. We don't want to scratch the surface too much, but we do want to make sure we get this back to a bright and shiny finish. So I'm just using standard 70% isopropyl that you can get at a pharmacy. Once I start doing this, you're gonna see how much nasty crud comes off on here. I don't know if you can already see, there's a difference there in the section that I'm cleaning. This is the other product I'll be using. This is CRC Electromotive. Okay, so I ended up getting a small like buffing wheel on the end of my Dremel tool. Got this pretty cleaned up. I'm not looking for crazy perfection, but I at least wanted all of the corrosion and nasty stuff off of there. So now we're gonna rebuild the switch and then test the functions with my multimeter. And while we're sliding this back in, we're gonna get this long spring. It's gonna drop down to this channel. Okay, so now we got that. Then we're gonna drop in our small metal rod here. Okay, so we got our cruise switch all back together. We've got our multimeter hooked up and it is set to an audible continuity tone. And what we're gonna do is check that each of the switch functions have continuity when the buttons are pressed via the 6 pins on the back of the plug coming from the switch. So first thing we're gonna check is that with the cruise control off, we have no continuity, and that's done via pins 4 and 5 on the plug. And then when we switch cruise on, we get our beep, we have continuity. So we know the cruise on function works. Now, we're gonna check the cancel button. And that's not fully off, but when you just kind of depress it to cancel cruise control without fully shutting it off. And that's done via pins 1 and 6. So we're gonna hook this up to pins 1 and 6 here. You can see with the depress of the button, it turns it off. The next one we're gonna check is the resume button, and that's this direction, or to accelerate. And that's done via pins 2 and 5. So let's check number 2, we'll check number 5, and we'll hit this button. Cool, we have continuity there. And then to set, we're gonna check pins 5 and 3. So pins 5 and 3 here, and when we hit the button, so we just verified that all of the functions on our cruise control switch now work, and when it goes back in the car, it's gonna work properly. So I'm gonna stop the video here, I'll get it thrown back in the car, we'll take it on the road, and I'll show you that it's working. All right, today's test subject is my 2001 Audi S4. 2.7 turbo with a functioning cup holder.
Nice.
We're going to see if these cruise control fixes I just tried are actually going to work. So hopefully you guys can see this pretty well, get a view of the cruise stalk and my speedo and stuff to verify that it is working here. Alright, so we're going to get up to about 40. I'm going to engage the cruise control. There we go. That is working. So it's set. There we are, we're accelerating. Canceled cruise control. Okay, we're going to set it again right here at 35. My feet are off the gas right now. So start accelerating again. And cancel. Alright, well that does it. It looks like it works. So hopefully you guys found this somewhat informative and you feel confident enough to tackle this fix yourself. It's really not too bad. You just have to be delicate with what you're doing and you should be fine. So good luck guys. Happy wrenching.